Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Steven Stogner. It's great to have this opportunity to speak with you today. And today I'll be speaking to you for a few minutes regarding electricity, arc flash hazards, and other hazards associated with the industry, and some basic things we can do to prevent injuries and incidents. So thanks again for your time. Through our discussion today, hopefully we can agree and continue to be diligent in our dedication and responsibility to our workforces as safety professionals. Because the reality is that we still have employees not returning home due to electrocutions, which is the fourth leading cause of fatalities in the United States in construction. First, though, let me introduce myself briefly. Again, I'm Steven Stogner, and I consider myself a passionate safety professional. I've worked in the industrial world of occupational safety and health for over 20 years. Graduated with my Bachelor of Science in Industrial Technology from Southeastern Louisiana University, and I've held my CSP, Certified Safety Professional designation, for around 10 years. So I began my journey as a safety professional in construction, spent some time in pipe and structural steel fabrication, soft craft, specialty industry, scaffolding, asbestos remediation, and hydroblasting, lead remediation. Did a little bit of time with a civil construction company, some consulting there, and in the last 6 years, I've been a supervisor for a global chemical manufacturer. So TRADESAFE, quickly, is a company dedicated to providing premium industrial safety products and technical safety solutions, mainly with emphasis on lockout-tagout products as they apply to the subject of controlling hazardous energy. They supply products such as locks, lockout devices, breaker locks, and other lockout-tagout products. And most recently, they've added workplace safety signs to their product line, and in the near future will offer safety showers, eye wash stations, spill kits, and a line of absorbent products. TRADESAFE products are manufactured to high-quality premium standards, and they're dedicated to providing industry-specific solutions and continuous innovation through direct customer feedback. Some quick research from OSHA reveals on the subject of arc flash that there are many different types of workers here recently that are still exposed to electrical hazards every day, not just electricians. And this includes workers such as office personnel, HVAC technicians, engineers, process operators, maintenance workers, heavy equipment operators, and others working in commercial and industrial construction. So even simple tasks can get someone injured if they're not aware of the electrical hazards in their workplace. Workers need effective training in their specific job hazard, right? That's pretty much the standard. We all know that. But how often are we training workers about the hazards they face, the not so often, quote, low risk tasks, but maybe there's a high risk of serious injury? So such as the maintenance worker who may go to check a breaker that might have tripped, is he trained in potential for arc flash, or does it apply depending on the voltage? How many times would he be allowed to reset the breaker before calling a certified electrician? Does that maintenance worker know what could happen if he accidentally forgets about the screwdriver when he shuts the door to the breaker panel? These are the sorts of training questions I believe we can ask to take our trainings to the next level. Think about real, practical situations that could happen in the field. Another thought about training in general is, have you ever asked your workforce to get involved in training to create more effective situational awareness in your training sessions? Their participation also encourages others to engage, and so I believe that increases our effectiveness of our training material. You want training to be effective so that folks are retaining knowledge so that it shows up in the results of their behavior, right? And that's safe behaviors. For job-specific hazards, are our training programs addressing the electrical do's and don'ts for each craft? We should be asking ourselves a few simple questions to assess our programs. Things like, do my job descriptions for my employees identify those who may come in contact with electricity? Another question is, do I cover basic electrical safety and compliance training? That's even true for office personnel. And then something like a third question would be, for electrically qualified individuals, does my training address do's and don'ts for their task? And that's where we kind of get into arc flash boundaries, certified electricians, and other occupations of that sort. So let's talk about recognizing some of these risks in our workplace. We need to be diligent in mitigating and controlling hazards for our tasks, right? That's what OSHA says. A good place to start is a gap assessment, which includes a list of jobs the job descriptions with those jobs, and then the tasks that folks are doing, along with what are we training people on. That's a great way to start. We can identify the hazards, the risks, and then how they're controlled. Remember, we want to start with engineering controls. That would be a complete elimination of hazards. And then secondly would be administrative controls, which are training, signs. And then lastly, we want to provide PPE. So that's kind of how we do our hierarchy of controls in that order. Also, remember in training, it's a good to remember the to-dos and the not to-dos. So if someone's not trained on a piece of equipment, employees need to know, hey, you're not trained on that, so don't touch that, right? This may seem like a daunting task doing a risk assessment, but if you're resource constrained, you can reach out to a colleague. Don't reinvent the wheel. Folks are more than willing to help. So let's get back into mechanisms of injury with arc flash. So what's arc flash? Right, that's by definition an incident where energized electrical conductors or circuit parts or other equipment arcs and causes a flash. This is typically very violent, where copper explodes within the wiring and it expands and melts, creating an explosion between the conductors. And if a person's nearby or working on this, it's either going to go to the person, go to ground, or strike other equipment. The potential for injury with arc flash is high, depending on duration and the distance the worker is from the arc. Things such as injuries such as severe burns, eye injuries, lacerations, falls, ear damage, and yes, even electrocution, which can lead to fatal injuries, right? Arc flash explosions, however, that's typically something that happens at high voltages, even when your amperage in your house. However, that can cause fatal injuries as well. So fatality statistics are not just linked to arc flash, but arc flash explosions can definitely kill and electrocute. But don't be deceived, right? Our electrical hazards at lower voltages can occur. So your house voltage and amps, speaking of amperage, is anywhere between 15,000 and 20,000 milliamps. It only takes 1,000 milliamps to produce fatal results. So, but getting back to arc flash and those sorts of qualified electricians, those are the people that fall under NFPA 70E that are only allowed to work on qualifying electrical equipment, exposed and energized parts. So let's talk about OSHA and some of the NFPA regulations that help us with this. So that subpart S, 1910 OSHA, is the design. It covers the design safety standards for electrical equipment, safety-related work practices, safety-related maintenance and requirements for special equipment such as wiring and wiring methods. The standard is the federal bare minimum, right, that OSHA has required for all things electrically related. So specifically, it applies mostly to those who are specialized electrical workers and electrical contractors. OSHA 1910 subpart R also covers electrical power transmission and generation. Power generation for companies that transfer and generate electricity. Last but not least, NFPA 70E, which is the topic of our some of our arc flash standard. This is incorporated by reference in OSHA 1910.6, and this means that whatever NFPA 70E standard requires is enforceable under OSHA. And so that standard specifically addresses safe work practices and requirements for working on or around live electrical equipment on certain voltages, including arc flash, boundary calculations, requirements and training for working on live conductors at certain voltages, and then PPE requirements and inspection requirements for PPE and other safe work practices for electrical work. So really, all in all, these standards have been designed to assist employers with identifying hazards, putting in minimum control standards to protect employees, identifying PPE, training requirements, and assisting employees with technical information needed to address arc flash boundaries, arc flash hazards, and controls for injury prevention. So OSHA has a various web pages and resources for employers. If you need help there, you can reach out to OSHA.gov, and there's some good resources on the OSHA website you can get, or reach out to them directly. So where do we go from here in regards to putting a program in place? So OSHA's lockout, tagout, tryout, or control of hazardous energy standard is designed to help employers standardize minimum requirements of a lockout tagout program, or basically the way that we identify, isolate and protect employees from various energy sources, right? So what does OSHA say that I need to have? So 1910.147 is the lockout tagout standard, and Appendix A gives a great example of a program. I mean, it's right there for us in the standard. And employers are required to have a program consisting of energy control procedures, training, periodic inspections to ensure that employees are protected and that our program is effective, and that energy is isolated and rendered inoperable through our program. And then more so, the program identifies how we isolate equipment, and it trains our employees effectively. So just kind of a recap, all in all, when it comes to electrical safety, arc flash, lockout tagout, hazardous energy, we've got to remember a few basic things. So one, we need a program that aligns with OSHA and includes 19 NFPA 70E when required. We've got to identify our gaps, what hazards exist, and then what are our control methods. We've got to identify our training, our qualified and non-qualified electrical folks, people that are allowed to perform lockout, and people that are working under lockout. There's all sorts of training that's required there. And speaking of training, get the most out of your training, do some different things, make sure it's effective. Reward those for bringing up hazards. Tell stories in the training. People remember stories. And, get out into the field and talk to your workforce about what hazards they deal with. Another question or thing that you can bring up during discussion is PPE. Let's make sure employees have the right PPE for their jobs, specifically for electrical jobs and tasks. We also need to write equipment-specific training procedures. Make sure that we're doing step-by-step good procedures that are easy to follow. And also, don't forget to try. Just because a breaker is locked out doesn't mean it's not working improperly, and that we need to go test that breaker to make sure that voltage is not bleeding through. Conduct audits and inspections. We want to make sure our programs are effective, and that includes reviewing our procedures, interviewing employees, reviewing our training, and then observing safe work practices. And get others involved, get employees involved so you have a good, effective audit. And last but not least, ensure we have a good quality equipment to perform lockout with. That's our locks, our devices that we purchase from companies like TRADESAFE for lockout tagout purposes. And then document what we're allowed to use, right? Blue locks or personal locks. Maybe you have a red lock system for equipment specific lockout. And TradeSafe offers that. And so, don't forget that the programs save lives, right? Inspect what we expect and hold our employees accountable. We'd rather send someone home alive rather than inform the family that someone's not coming home. That's what it all boils down to. Thanks again for the opportunity. Look, don't forget, check out the TradeSafe website. There's a variety of quality premium lockout products, locks, hasps, breaker isolation devices, lock boxes, lockout kits, valve isolation devices, cord and plug locks, lockout stations, and heavy duty tag. And so just kind of in closing, it's been a great time here at the end of this webinar. I appreciate the opportunity. I hope this makes sense. I hope I was able to add to the webinar some ideas and thoughts that have helped. And again, thanks for the opportunity. And if you need to reach out, my contact information is on the TradeSafe website under the authors page. Thanks so much. See y'all next time.